Hey all, Adam the Exacto Guru here. Today I'm going to talk about an issue that's come up in our home quite a bit, as it affects my partner personally. That issue is cultural appropriation, and I hope you'll bear with me. Cultural appropriation can be defined as the act of adopting elements from an outside, often minority culture, things such as knowledge, customs, and symbols, without understanding or respecting the original culture or context these items held. Cultural appropriation is different from things like cultural exchange, where resources and other goods are shared by multiple cultures throughout history. These are things usually traded and exchanged without the involvement of power structures. If two cultures meet on equal ground, exchange occurs. When a dominant group takes or usurps from a weaker group, appropriation is happening. Appropriation is also different from assimilation, which happens when minority cultures are forced to leave their customs and traditions behind in favor of aspects from a dominant culture to be accepted. While still an issue in and of itself, this is not appropriation, as it is done with the intent to promote survival and reduce discrimination. One of the worst things appropriation does is to prolong existing stereotypes and add new ones that people of minorities then have to suffer. Examples of these stereotypes are things like dressing up as a First Nations chief, Japanese geisha, or an Arab Sikh for Halloween. This reduces something which holds cultural significance to a mere costume, to play in. This example is especially prevalent in North America, where it's common to teach children First Nations history by having them dress as braves and chiefs. You wouldn't teach a child about African culture in school by having them dress up in blackface. Why is it okay to do the same to the native people? The majority of the decorations on an outfit worn by a First Nations person in celebration are earned, some of them at tremendous personal cost, not limited to blood, sweat, or tears. The fact that I can buy a headdress from the dollar store at Halloween says that no one understands the sheer amount of work that goes into earning a real headdress in most tribes. Most Caucasian kids grow up playing games like cowboys and Indians, running around with pretend bows and arrows and those same dollar store headdresses. While for most of Canadian history, we've been stealing actual First Nations children from their parents, stealing them and putting them into schools where they were tortured mentally, physically, and emotionally, simply for being themselves. Telling these poor kids that they are evil, demonic creatures, simply because they did not have an understanding of a Christian deity, and the devil must be whipped from their souls. While I personally do not believe what the First Nations believe spiritually, it is absolutely wrong for me, you, or anybody else to prevent them from believing it. Yet we've created a situation where those who do want to learn have an immensely uphill battle to do so. By treating the First Nations with such cruelty, we've caused many to completely abandon their traditions to the point where many cannot even remember them. Others have such an intermixed understanding of their spirituality, combining what they remember from tradition with Christian belief, that it's nearly impossible to find any pure source of knowledge for those traditions in most areas. To be clear, there has been appropriation of European culture as well. We've just failed to see the full force of the negative impacts due to the passage of time. I'm speaking largely about the First Nations of North America, as they are the example I'm most familiar with. To be clear, there has been appropriation of European culture as well. We've just failed to see the full force of the negative impacts due to the passage of time. I'm speaking largely about the First Nations of North America, as they are the example I'm most familiar with. The native peoples also do not have the luxury of the haze of time, as their culture is very much alive and active. We as a society need to learn that the way to learn from others about their ways is to simply fucking ask them. Be upfront with the people around you. Let them know you don't understand and see that you don't have to be afraid of not understanding. One key thing we could do to improve this whole problem is to, instead of dressing our kids up in costumes to teach them, invite someone who practices the traditions of a culture into the classroom to explain what their customs actually are. The reality is, we should approach the topic of culture like we would approach any other situation when dealing with a stranger. Give them the respect of asking them what their specific circumstance happens to be. It's a basic human decency thing that too many of us put aside on the topics of culture, religion, and politics. We've allowed it to be far too easy to say things like, "Oh, you're this. You must think, do, or be that." And it's time to change our way of thinking. Well, those are my thoughts on that for now. If you stuck with me this far, please don't forget to like and subscribe. For now, I'm the Exacto Guru, reminding you to be excellent to each other.
Well, fuck.